Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we are getting incredibly close to having our Eve plans completed here. We're getting really close. This is a very complicated mission, and this has taken a long time, but I have really enjoyed this process. This has been great for me. I don't know if anyone else has liked it, but I've liked it a lot. So I was thinking in the end of the previous episode that we might actually have too much authority in these air brakes right now. We could limit their authority down to like simply 7 degrees or something. That is an option. Now, I mentioned disabling the pitch and yaw for these previously. I'm actually going to turn those back on, and we're just going to try authority limiting them instead, and see how that ends up going. There is, however, one more thing I wanted to do up here, and I wanted to make these header tanks a little bit better. Now, if we look at the protective rocket nose cone here, you can see I was searching for fuel adapters, but if you look at the protective rocket nose cone, I want to check the actual weight of these. Okay, so that weighs 0.12 tons. So this is going to be a little bit heavier, but I don't think that's actually an issue. If we remove these rocket nose cones, I'm also going to remove these reaction wheel assemblies for now, and I'm going to take this off too. We're going to put in the larger inline reaction wheels, and then we're going to put that tank there. And the reaction wheels, of course, will be to try to help us hold attitude. It's not going to be the best in Atmo, but it'll be okay. And then we're going to grab ourselves a fuel adapter. Not that one. We're going to grab ourselves this fuel adapter. That'll get us a little bit more fuel in these tanks and have roughly the same amount of space here. And these fuel adapters, they weigh, that's the A151L. So that's these guys. They weigh 3.375 tons. However, a large amount of that is the liquid fuel. So, that's all well and good. We're going to put aerodynamic nose cones on top of that. And those aerodynamic nose cones, they weigh much less than the other nose cones. It's not a wash. This is heavier. But we knew that would be the case. So we're just going to go ahead and test this out. It should be okay, I think. The question is, do we have too little attitude control? That is certainly the question. We may have too little attitude control with these air brakes on 7 degrees instead of 70. That said, they'll also provide less drag, so there is that. So we are, of course, going to simulate a launch on Eve, and we're going to do this at an altitude of, this is fine, and a pitch of 90 degrees. I am going to turn on no crash damage. We are not testing crashing. And we are going to ease this to ground, and we want to make sure that our pitch is 90 degrees. Excellent. So we'll give that a go. Oh, we needed the lesser physics easing, didn't we? Oh well, this is good enough. So we will go ahead and take off here. And we'll just hang out somewhere over here. Should be a reasonable location. And let's just watch our thrust to weight here. You can definitely see that we are accelerating, but that is to be expected. I'm going to keep our thrust to weight at around 1.5 this time. I find that that's easier to maintain. Excellent. So we'll just continually drop our thrust to weight on our way up. And this should, in theory, take us just that little bit further. Now, we did not extend the center tank, but I'm testing our attitude control right now. And actually, our attitude control feels really good. Like, incredibly good. I do think 1.5 is a little bit low on the thrust to weight. So instead, I'm going to go to 1.6. How's it like if we just come on over to 45 degrees? We're actually fine at 45 degrees. We've come back a little bit. Oh, we are tumbling. We are tumbling now. Yeah, we're losing attitude. Okay. So that's intriguing, for sure. That tells me a lot. A, I do want to target 1.6. B, I want to adjust this inner tank here. And C, I don't know how we're going to get in there. I guess we can come in like this. Remove this engine plate temporarily. And the question is, how much more fuel are we going to need in here? Well, we can't have it drop lower than these engines. So, I would like to do like a Rockamax X32 would be ideal. I don't know if we have the space for that in there. This doesn't want to go in the way I want it to go in. This is certainly awkward. We could remove the side tanks. I'd prefer to not do that. But it might end up being necessary. So, for right now, we'll just take these off of there. And then we'll put this in. Like that in theory. And then we would put these guys back on in 8x symmetry. About like that. Double check that their strutting worked correctly, as well as their fuel lines. It looks like they did. And you can see here that this did indeed bring that down a little bit. So what I'm going to do to fix that is I'm actually going to simply grab, if I can, the decoupler here. And we're going to bring this ever so slightly down to be about here. Like this. I think we're okay. Like that. That should do. So that will add a decent amount of additional delta V. Like, a fairly substantial amount, actually. And I'm actually thinking about repositioning some of these air brakes to be more like... I do want snapping on here. So to have them be more along the lines of... that. Now, these aren't going to be the most effective landing legs, I can tell you that. But honestly, we're not going to need them to be. That'll be fine. And I do want to up the authority on these to be maybe 11 instead. The snapping on this seems to make round numbers kind of difficult, but 11, I think, we'll give that a go. So we have additional fuel here. Our thrust to weight is nil. Okay. So what we're going to do to fix that is we're going to pull out these vectors, and we are going to go to triple vectors in the center core. Assuming that I can get these to go in the way I want them to. Which is a big assumption and means that we're going to need to take these back off. Something like that. And then mount this. Say... oh, this is very laggy. Mount it, say, here. Yes. Double check that all that connected correctly. It looks like it did. Fantastic. So that puts our thrust to weight. Ah. These were not burning here. There we go. That puts our thrust to weight at just over 1, which is not ideal. Our thrust to weight on surface is going to be very low, but our thrust to weight when we get up to max altitude is going to be extraordinarily high. This also means we have another engine gimbaling down here. Combine that with the authority limiter on these air brakes going to 11 degrees, and I think that will make a pretty dramatic difference. Now the other thing is we should really try to just pick our ascent angle and stick with that, at least until we get into thinner atmosphere. So that is definitely something that I am considering here. Okay, so we will put ourselves in like so. I'm going to change that ease in multiplier because I just feel like this is a little bit on the safer side. And we'll just bring it on down. And let's check that thrust to weight. That thrust to weight is actually slightly higher than I was expecting it to be. And that's pretty great. We're going to try going up at a 45-degree angle here. And just hold position here. So we can see here, we are definitely building up some speed. We're at 1.5 thrust to weight now, as we're burning off this fuel. 1.6, so I will begin to drop our throttle. And I'm just kind of picking this angle and sticking with it. I'm not going to try to adjust our attitude going up. Where we go, we go. We definitely need to drop thrust here, though. I wasn't really paying attention to that. So we'll continue dropping our thrust. Excellent. We're now down to 2/3 thrust. And continuing to drop. We don't really need to move all that quickly through the atmosphere here. We just need to get altitude. However, any horizontal speed that we're getting is very, very helpful for us right now. I am wondering if a vertical ascent might not be more efficient given just how thick this atmosphere is, so maybe. It's a possibility. Okay, we're starting to pick up a shimmy. That's not unusual at this point. I think that means that we've got a little bit too... Okay. I did not do anything to create that. Okay. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Okay, so we are already way too high on this thrust to weight. I'm just interested in seeing where this will get us to with that tumble. We have quite a lot of burn time here and a lot of power to it, too. Now, our apoapsis isn't all that high. I really feel like we didn't pick up very much horizontal speed at all. I am thinking that maybe we shouldn't try to get horizontal speed in Atmo. I'm strongly considering that as of right now. Try to get purely through the atmosphere with those strap-on boosters. And then ditch those. And try to get this into orbit. Oh, hello. We're tumbling here. This isn't shocking to me that we're tumbling in this stage, to be clear. Okay, so let's go ahead and revert that back, and we've learned some interesting things. First off, I do want to attempt a pure vertical liftoff. And I think that that will fix a lot of our aerodynamic issues as well. I'm going to try that with no alterations here. I do not want to attempt to put on any sort of drag introducers, is the term I'm going to go for, on that center core. I want to avoid that. We could potentially go back down to 2 engines in the center core. I would need to look at the actual thrust to weight, but that is something that I want to look at after this. So we'll try this one more time here, and we're going to try just going straight up, because I feel like we're not really picking enough horizontal speed up to really have that be worthwhile. So we'll let the physics easing end here, and then we will lift on off and go to straight up. Okay, and we'll just try to hold straight up as our attitude. Just waiting for the prograde marker to get here. And then we'll just try to hold prograde on surface prograde. Okay, dropping our thrust to weight a little. Hold surface prograde. Continually dropping that thrust to weight. Excellent. We are currently almost to 1/3 thrust. Or rather, to 2/3 thrust. I'm noticing our prograde marker drifting here. I want to hold straight up, if at all possible. Let's drop that thrust. We are expecting a potential shimmy to pick up here. But yeah, I just want vertical speed here. I don't care about the horizontal speed at this juncture. Okay. I do think that dropping that center vector may be a good thing. Well, let's just continue doing this. I dropped that thrust to weight slightly early there. Okay, let's drop it there. We have a pretty good apoapsis height here, actually. Or a decent apoapsis height, all things considered. Continually dropping our thrust to weight ratio as we continue to ascend through the atmosphere here. We're definitely starting to pick up a lot of speed, and that's very good. Okay, throttle up, separation. Throttling down. 1.6. We've drifted off of straight up. And honestly, at this point, we should probably be burning more over this way. We're in very thin atmosphere, and so we should be able to hold here without an issue. And honestly, now we should be burning at the horizon and picking up horizontal speed only. I'm going to continually drop our thrust to weight here, though. Our time to apoapsis is decreasing, so I'm just going to let it hold here until, and that's going to be the number that we're going to optimize. Okay, I'm going to adjust our positioning here. Time to apoapsis is still decreasing. I'm going to go back up to 2/3 thrust. I'm going to go to full thrust at this time. Time to apoapsis is increasing. I'm going to coast at this point until we're at 40 seconds, and we'll test. We are out of the atmosphere. To be clear, I do not believe that we have enough delta V right now to do this. Actually, we do. We have enough delta V. Okay. I'm not burning this optimally. There's no doubt about that. How's our electric charge looking? It's fine. It's completely fine. Okay, let's just burn this about like so. We've got 20 seconds of burn left. We need to wait until we're closer to this apoapsis, but this is it. This works. We did it. Our ascent module is functional. Now, we need 2 more things to make our ascent module truly functional. 2 more things. And those 2 things are going to be pretty easy, I think. Okay, I'm just going to take this up to N orbit. This is not efficient. But there we go, N orbit. And we've got 139 meters per second of pad with our orbit this elliptical. We did it. That's an ascent module. Okay. We don't need to adjust this. It worked fine. So we're going to revert that back, of course. That was a simulation. Our ascent module works. Now, we need 2 more things on it. And they're not heavy. They shouldn't affect our ascent in any meaningful way. But the things that we need are docking ports. We absolutely need to be able to dock this thing to a miner craft on the surface and to a refueling vessel once we get into orbit. But this worked. Barely, but it worked. Do I think that a docking port, a pair of like docking port juniors or a docking port and a docking port junior are going to cause 123 delta V lossage? Because that was our margin there. And we should assume that our margin could be a little higher or a little lower, all things considered. So we're at 4736 here. Let's actually use this number, 4544. And we will simply do that. That dropped us by 1 delta V. Excellent. And I do want to have multiple on there. So then let's take another one. Over here, we're only going to need a single one. And I'm going to drop that guy, say, here. I'm actually going to do, like, 4. They don't weigh much at all. And we'll just do something like that and mount them in there. That should, in theory, do the trick. So, at this point, we need to test one more thing. We had a successful ascent with this model. Oh, I need to take this back. We need to test our descent and make sure that those docking ports don't burn off super early in the descent. That's the only other thing that we need to test. Now, I believe that because they are above the air brake, that should shield them. I hope. But we need to revert this back and make sure that we only have the header tank fuels. And that is going to be only these up here and this one. So we're going to drop the fuel in these fuel tank adapters. We're going to drop the fuel in these 32 tanks and in these 64 tanks. Like that. And then in our inner core here, we're going to drop the fuel here. As well as not doing that. Thank you very much. And we need to remove this fuel. Oh, that undid all of this. Oh, that makes me sad. Okay, so we'll do that, and then we'll drop this fuel, we'll drop this fuel, and then the fuel in this tank down here, if I can get at it. Yes. No, that's the engine plate. Yes. Okay, double checking. We should only have fuel in our header tanks at this time. Yes. And to be clear, I don't know how we're going to get this up, actually. We'll check that later on. Now, docking this on the way out is going to be interesting. There's no doubt about that. We might want to send a fuel tanker to it rather than docking it to a station, but that's something that we can cross a little later on. So, nice and simple. We're just going to do a re-entry test. And we're going to look to come in relatively quick here, but we have super high thrust to weight, and so we should be able to do a re-entry burn very, very swiftly. I'm going to go ahead and deploy all 3 of our air brakes. Again, I really should put this on an action group. And our air brakes are going to do a large amount of the work here. And I want the deploy angle to be 90, actually. I still feel like 90 is actually slightly more efficient, but 100 is probably slightly safer. But since we have the re-entry burn, I think we'll be okay. So we're going to come in at an altitude of 120,000 kilometers. 120,000 meters. So we're going to have 30 kilometers in free fall before we hit the atmosphere. We're not going to ease that to the ground. Okay, let's give this a go. What we're checking for here, well, we're going to have to position because I didn't do that, but that's okay. What we're checking for here is that these docking ports don't all burn off immediately. Okay, so we're just going to bring it on in over here, and we want to just be facing surface retrograde. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and fire our engines. And we are going to time warp our way on down. Straight into the atmosphere. You can see here we are going to be entering the atmosphere at a reasonably high speed. Not tremendously high. As long as we're under 1 kilometer per second entering the atmosphere, we should be fine. Okay. So we're going to do our re-entry burn in a moment here. Our heating will start up very soon. Okay, let's do it. Now, I didn't burn everything out there. We've actually still got 3 meters per second here. A little more, actually. Still like 100 meters per second. I'm going to continue burning this. There we go. That's what we've got. So our air brakes are doing their job at this point. They're slowing us down very nicely. Yeah, this is definitely doing the trick. So, very shortly, we will deploy our drogue chutes, which is these two, I believe. Right? Yeah, those are our drogue chutes. SAS no longer matters. That can go off. Drogue chutes can deploy. And then our mains. Fantastic. This looks like this is perfectly safe. So I would call that a successful ascent. Whoa. Our chutes were just destroyed. Did it not say safe for deploy? Regardless, we can wait until later. I just wanted to test that that was all good. We can wait until we're down lower and a little slower. That's fine. I'm going to call that a successful re-entry test and a successful test on our ascent. So I would say at this point that the ascent module, it's done. There's nothing else to do here. We're good. Except there is one thing to test. It's not really a test, per se. It's the fact that our separations were on no crash damage. That is the thing. But if we're going straight up, we shouldn't have an issue with that. We've had successful tests with crash damage on going straight up. So I think that we're going to call this done. Wonderful. So we'll save that, and it is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we already have our science rover complete. We may send that up, but we also need to work on... This is our science rover here. We also need to work on our deployable science, and we need to work on our mining craft, right? The other major issue here is that this docking port isn't at an adjustable height, and that's something that we're going to have to work on. So that is going to be what we are going to work on in the next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and I will see you all next time.